KLTV sound check. KLTV sound check.
Morning, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday meeting of the BOCC. To get started, if you want to join me, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Minutes from the last meeting, Commissioner Mortensen.
Good morning, everyone. Just the usual, reviewed the minutes of the activities last week, and I do move to approve those minutes.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes from last week. Any questions, corrections, anything?
Nothing for me.
See none, call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Run down through the consent agenda. Pretty light agenda today. Agreements, contracts, bid awards. We have a completion letter from All Stripes LLC for the installation and upgrade of curve warning signs. This was the feds sent out grants for this and it's been completed. I think what I saw in the notes, the total cost of this at the grant we got was $472,300, and that's been completed. Resolutions to certify the 2025 budget for Silver Lake Flood District. As I've mentioned in past weeks, we're starting to see those come in. It's that time of year. And a resolution to authorize engineering and right-of-way acquisition for the Chapman Road Drainage Improvement Project. We're looking at a total estimated cost of $150,000. There's along this, the part of Chapman Road we're talking about is in water events. It tends to flood, and we're looking at ways to mitigate that and keep the water where it's supposed to be. Vouchers this week in amount of $5,268,088.57. And that's it for consent agenda. Any questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, the striping contract, I think, is inspired some discussion with staff and us on whether or not it may be less expensive for us to acquire a striping machine. I think that was one of the discussions we're looking at. We have some interlocal agreements with smaller governments to do striping as well. And so anyway, we're looking at those opportunities to see if there may be some cost savings in the future by having it in-house rather than contracting out.
Cost of paint has been going through the roof.
Yeah, cost of paint's been going through the roof, so that's that. And the Silver Lake Flood Control District is made up of folks who live along Silver Lake, and they're most interested at keeping the level of the lake at a stable level. And so years and years ago, they formed a flood control district. They actually have an outlet dam across the outlet creek from which that lake drains. And so they do maintain, this district maintains and controls that dam and making sure it's working properly. Otherwise, there'd be some dramatic shifts in the elevation of that lake. And it's kind of interesting. Turns out that I think our engineering staff is the staff for the dam. They check it and make sure it's running, operating, and so our staff has already taken care of those bridges or of that program.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we do approve today's consent agenda as submitted by staff.
Okay, we have a motion to approve today's consent agenda. Questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Also vote aye. Thank you. To two items on, before I open up this fairly quick here today. Before I open up public comment, we have a public hearing at 9:30. And we're going through, you've seen us go through periodically, I think probably on a quarterly basis, we go through budget amendments and you'll see that. Our Kathy will be in and she'll be going over budget amendments for this last quarter. Then at 10 o'clock, on a yearly basis, we give out excellence in service awards and we'll hold that in here at 10 o'clock today. So at 1:30 today, we will be going over the behavioral health tax and where that stands. Just a lot of, so kind of pay attention to your agendas if you've picked up, a lot of things going on. It's budget season. One other correction, and I'll open it up for public comment. Last week, we had a conversation that revolved around the landfill. We were trying to recall the life estimate on that, and I think we gave you around 80 years, and that's the 80+ year range is correct if you take into account the shutdown, the actual service life of it, taking stuff. We were told the last estimate was around 58 years, so I just want to make that clear. I don't want to give you wrong information. We asked Sean on that, and he said, well, actually, taking the product, we're estimating about 58 years, but to go through the shutdown process, that puts us out 80 years. What year are we in the tenant way in the shutdown process?
We shut it down in 2014.
We're about 10 years
So
into
10
that.
years into
We
that.
have-
And
we
that,
have
I
more to
think
go
that's a 30-year observation time that we have
To-
to maintain.
to work on that. Okay. With that, we'll turn it over to you, at least till 9:30.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Jim Hill.
Give us the light on.
My apologies.
There you go.
Again, my name is Jim Hill. I reside at 1100 North 22nd Avenue, Kelso, Washington. Forgive me for a moment because I need to deal with some technology, and my generation barely knew how to dial a rotary phone. So that will brief pause here.
Well, some nowadays have never seen a rotary phone.
You must know my grandchildren. Gentlemen, good morning. The clarification on the age, anticipated age of the landfill is greatly appreciated. But I'm here today specifically to ask some very simple questions. And I want to make sure I report back to my city council this evening exactly what's stated and anticipated. As a member of SWAC, I raised the concern over representation last week. My first question is, what have we seen in terms of interested applicants for the vacant seats? Mr. Chairman, if you could possibly brief me on that.
Have we seen any come in? I haven't seen any. We haven't seen any come in.
So we've seen no applications at all. That means that the city of Longview has not presented an individual to represent that community on the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. That would be my assumption based on the fact. I'm not even sure they've had a conversation about possible representation, but I had recommended to you gentlemen that the city of Castle Rock might be interested in that as commissioners, and perhaps your solid waste manager and your, oh, by the way, that position is still remains open. The solid waste management manager position is still open.
Is Mike Moss on? Mike sent an email.
I think Mike
Answering your-
explaining that they did some restructuring. It's They actually have 2 supervisors.
Yeah,
up
and there
there
will be
now.
no manager.
Yeah.
I'm confused because your website shows that position is open, and that's something that might be corrected because there might be folks interested in that position. And in fact, it's already filled. So not criticizing Longview for not having a representative who's come forward. My recommendation is that the city of Castle Rock be approached for possible representation as an alternative. Just suggesting. I've had no discussions with them, nor will I. But I'd like you to take that into consideration, gentlemen, if you would.
So just a quick question,
I'm
Jim.
sorry, I was addressing the chairman, but I'll listen, Mr. Mortensen.
Oh, maybe that's not necessary.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, I presented to you a document that was produced some time ago. This particular document is pretty self-explanatory in that it's a simple request that the proceeds from the landfill, the profit, as was mentioned, be equitably shared amongst our communities. I believe that was the intent at one time. And the fact of the matter is those profits shared according to this plan, which could be updated in terms of both income and population. But those monies would do a lot towards keeping our industry and our residents' fees, some of them among the lowest in the county. And by the way, kudos to your staff and the people that administer the landfill. Remarkable job. Big disappointment, we don't capture the methane. That's not our choice. That was a choice made out of Olympia, putting a lot of ball bearings and
Well,
gears.
Jim, that's not quite accurate.
Please enlighten me.
We capture it, we burn it off. Okay,
There-
so we don't utilize it for energy purposes.
Forgive me,
Yeah. That's a huge roadblock, and the Department of Ecology has told us that they don't want us to convert it.
you
They
see,
want it totally consumed.
and it's infuriating because it's just obviously contributing to issues that we all are dealing with. Nevertheless, the bottom line is, in general, the operation of that landfill is extraordinary, both in staff and management. My concern is, what do I go back and tell my council this evening as to your future plans for adjustments to rates, whether they be residential or commercial? And I'd like to give them an honest sort of appraisal of where I think Board of County Commissioners are going. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm sure you folks have had discussions. I know a couple in the past year or so in general about the operation of the landfill, but I really truly don't know your vision for what the residents in our industry should anticipate from this board. So any enlightenment would help, because I have to go talk to folks that are going to talk to the people more closely. I mean, obviously you represent the entire county and the population and all of that stuff, but my council kind of needs to know so they can tell me the position I need to take to best represent the city of Kelso.
Well, I can tell you the plans with the rates as I understand them at this point in time. I don't know if Mike is around or somebody from there.
Mr. Moss, you're talking about?
Yeah,
Okay.
just in case I don't spell it out, but we subsidized the transfer station to the tune of 1.3 million last year. It's
Yes, sir,
estimated
you
to be
did.
1.6 this year. Our goal is to try and get that down to 1. We're not saying we won't subsidize some of that, but we wanted to get it down more reasonable to 1 million. So they're going to look at the fee structure for but they're going to try and they're looking at adjusting the fee structure for outside entities that utilize our services more than the fee structure for people within the county. Is that pretty close to what I think Mike has talked about?
Yeah, the intent always is that out-of-county waste is necessary for the income. There are also other problems. Our transfer station here is fairly crowded at times, and there's a notion that you can manage the queues by adjusting the fees, and it's a formulation that says vets get preference of certain things and so forth. But yes, you're correct.
So in a simple nutshell, that's what we're looking at.
So, Mr. Chairman, it was mentioned there's a formulation. So I assume there's a document that sort of spells out the formulation on how rates and offset, all those things are sort of discussed. And if there is a document, I'd sure appreciate it. Because I'd like to know the formula used
Yeah.
for.
And I don't know if all that is set in stone yet, Jim. I know anytime we do fees, I'm pretty sure there'll be a public hearing here, and that will all have to be laid out as to how it's going about. But I don't know that it's set in stone right at this point in time.
And
I could be wrong.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay, I get how things work and the complication, and nobody has access to all the information. Let's face it, we can't consume all the information as elected we're provided, quite frankly. And it's not a fair criticism, certainly, that we don't know certain things. But I would request that a SWAC meeting be called. I know that there's been lots of discussion in certain organizations and entities out there about finding folks that are interested in filling our vacant seats. So however we can put together a SWAC to initiate a conversation, if nothing else, and perhaps introduce new members to the other members that sit on SWAC. But I also want to emphasize, I want my council to be advised basically on what they can anticipate in the future so that they can honestly say to me what they're finding in the community as to any rate changes or impact things that happen on the landfill. So,
So Jim,
Yes,
I keep hearing from city officials that somehow Cowlitz County is setting your garbage rates, your garbage collection rates. And that's not true.
We know that.
We don't set that. That's a combination of the fees that are charged for processing the waste at the landfill. But the city's contract with private carriers to collect the solid waste. And they're the ones that make the recommendation to you to do the annual rate increases, in part to cover their costs as costs of fuel go up and wage rates go up. I mean, that's reasonable. But I know that there's this misunderstanding that somehow the rates we pass are the rates that you have to pass on to your customers. And it's not quite that simple at all. We have not raised those rates. That was one of the big issues. So one of the reasons why the transfer center, quote, gets subsidized by the rest of the landfill operations, because we've not raised those rates. Part of that is because we're determined to keep the rates as low for our customers as possible, including industry, who supplies an awful lot of important jobs for our county. Paper industry is highly competitive, and the costs of disposing of those wastes are a major part of their ability to stay competitive. So, but the stuff that comes in from outside the county, they'd have no ownership of the landfill, right? And we can charge them a higher rate because their transportation costs go down when they stop here instead of Eastern Washington or the other larger landfill rates. Now, one of the things that you have presented us this morning, I don't know if you're going to be talking about it, is modeled after documentation that I developed. And we had a decision to approach the cities, for support for us to drop our entertaining Republic taking over the management of the landfill. And part of that was a suggestion at the time of some profits sharing, because we anticipated the profits being made. County commissioners discussed it, didn't approve it. They said no. Later on, not too much, around about the time of the document as dated in 2022, there was another meeting with city officials. And their demand was that the entire rent be determined on a per capita basis. And I said, that's a non-starter. We spend so much money for countywide activities in terms of law and justice and the other things, that was a non-starter. So a second time, County Commission reviewed the recommendations, my suggestion, and said, no, we're not going to do that. And there was a pretty important and fundamental reality that that is the basis of the board's refusal to go along with profit sharing. And that is, and we've talked about it before, and that is, it's all of the taxpayers of Cowlitz County through their property taxes guarantee the payment of the bonds. Now, the Three Rivers wastewater treatment plant overbuilt their facility. They approved a plan to pour millions of dollars in, borrow that money. But the four entities that make up that utility signed agreements to pledge their property taxes to pay the bill. So that's not happening with the landfill. I mean, that could be a model, but that's not what we've chosen to do. So the cities don't have a financial risk compared to what the county has, because we have the entire burden of guaranteeing payment of those bonds. So far, we've not had a problem using the rent monies that we're collecting to make the payments. And we don't anticipate to ever have any problem. But, you know, if something horrible happens to the economy, I mean, that guarantee is there for a purpose, just like it is with the Three Rivers. The structure is different. The whole discussion of profit sharing, I would have loved to see that, but it's been discussed. And the current board is of a pretty strong mind that no. So we're going to continue to work as best we can to keep those rates and the costs as low as possible. Take advantage of the opportunity to help neighboring counties to lower their costs for their customers at a premium. Maybe charge them more than we charge our own. And that's the way it should be, because we collectively own that landfill. It's our resource.
Hopefully this is a discussion that we can revisit with you folks on the commission. The interesting part of this is that as a city, we're one entity, but the fact of the matter is our residents live within the county. They have assumed the responsibility for debt payment long-term on the landfill. Those are folks that live in the county. Now, we at the city always talk about our city's residents, when in fact the discussion we ought to be having is a larger one. And it's something that hopefully we're going to come back to you folks and say, could we please sit down and revisit this? And let us give you another perspective or a revised perspective or whatever view we think has changed since our last discussion on revenue sharing. That's what we're asking for. But we have to have that larger discussion, first of all, amongst ourselves as representatives for our city. They have to tell me the position that I need to take as I speak to folks that are going to provide you with advice, hopefully that you'll listen to. And then they also have to go out and talk to folks that happen to live in Kelso, but are also residents of the county who face an obligation and agreed to accept that obligation, financial obligation, for the landfill. But those folks also need to be assured that if some of the money that is acquired through profits of that operation can be returned to the city and do things for the city, that's a discussion we ought to have and when I talk to folks. So thank you for the time. It's It's appreciated, gentlemen.
Thank you. We got just.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to offer
Sorry.
that some clarity of sorts regarding SWAC and more specifically, the algorithms. Those have been discussed through the governance committee, which had representatives from Kelso and Longview on that. There's a difference. The public is confusing.
There's actually two committees. There's a governance committee that I think most of the city managers sit on,
No, it's, the governance is only 4 people.
4 people. And then there's a SWAC committee. So there's 2 different committees. That's what he's referring to.
Right, and those issues have, the thing I'm trying to counter, there is no secret that at the landfill or at the transfer station, I should say, there's so many variables to play with. And all of those variables are up to be played to optimize the goal. So it's been discussed quite a bit in the past also. And I recall probably the first discussion is about 2 years ago that I sat in. Dennis has been on there for a while. I'm sure he could say this has been a discussion. On the one hand, you operate a business, and on the other hand, you have an obligation to the public expectations, and you try and balance those. And at some point, it gets out of whack. You mentioned we were 1.3 in the hole last year, and we'll be 1.6 in the hole this year. At some point, you say enough is enough, and that's really what's on the table. And the next thing I want to say is these committees, even the governance committee, is advisory. The end decision is here.
Mr. Hill, you mentioned you're gone. We should probably try to send him a copy of the map that shows comparative rates from the counties that show us really low. That he wants to report something back to his council.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good piece.
We can probably send that to their city manager.
I know Mike and Sean are on. Maybe Sean can.
Yeah,
forward that to
Sean
Kelly,
probably
and
has that map
she
quite
can get it
handy.
over to.
Good morning,
You know what
Commissioners.
you're
Mike Moss,
talking about, Mike, right?
Public Services Director. Yeah, actually, at the last SWAC meeting, we handed out that map that you
Oh, you
referenced.
did. Okay,
So, but
so
we
he
can
has it.
certainly get copies to other council members if needed.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Who was that?
That was Mike.
It was Mike.
Mike Moss.
Oh,
I'm sorry he's gone. I just wanted to mention to him, he wants money to go to the city. Okay, in a way, you guys are doing that because with lower fees, the businesses that are run in the city, the residents that live in the city are benefiting from what you guys are doing. So yes, you are giving to the city, but just not directly.
Okay, we're butting up. I think we're right up against time. So Kathy gets.
Kathy Funk Baxter, Finance Director. So we have on the agenda a public hearing for a budget amendment, and I will be happy to go over the budget amendment that we're recommending Board of Commissioners approve today. We have, it's our quarterly, a quarterly basis. We try to review the budget and look at both revenues and expenses for things that need to be amended and updated. And in this particular budget amendment, we have an awful lot of review of our revenues and on our general fund. We reviewed every department's revenue sources, included things that were new grants and contracts that had been initiated since the last budget amendment. And we are happy to announce that we are increasing the fund balance for our general fund $746,000 due to reviewing all of that. We do have some increases in expenses for things like the Hall of Justice repairs. Facilities maintenance is performing a number of repairs at our Hall of Justice as well as a few other buildings, but that's the major one. And then our sheriff's office also had some new contracts, and so some additional expenses for that are some of the other major ones. We also are in our non-departmental, we're requesting a transfer out to our risk management. They now have an obligation to pay some assessments, and the assessments have changed, and they're now billing us for a full year in the month of October. So we need to be able to provide those funds to pay that assessment. And then we also had at our Supreme Court, we had some contracts, a new grant that we got from AOC, and some additional funds for extra security at the Hall of Justice. So those are the primary areas for our general fund budget amendments. And then for some of our other funds, for example, in the roads fund, we increased the revenue for our timber excise tax to equal what we've received so far. And that was a almost $734,000 increase. And that money went to fund balance for the roads fund. So overall, we have several adjustments. As I said, most of those are increasing revenues. Investment income has increased over what we originally budgeted. And then we have some other expenses. For example, in our sewer and water area, some additional repairs. We had in the equipment and operating equipment, it's equipment, it's ER&R. And we had a mower, we had to purchase a mower max. That was like a $273,000 expense that happened. And then in our IT area, we went through and adjusted our ending fund balance, and we discovered that we have excess fund balance in our operating account, and we want to maintain those excess balances in our actual reserve account. So it's available for renovations, repairs, more capital long-term assets. And that was almost $1.6 million as far as a correction to the fund balance. And
What wasn't that when we had IT in, that
Yes.
was kind of the request of the board is, let's say, not have this look like a savings account because it has a purpose, and you try to move it over.
yeah, move it up. We leave enough cash flow in the operating account, but we don't want to have the excess cash in the operating account. We want it to be in the capital replacement account.
Right.
And so it's available for unexpected events as well as for replacement of long-term assets. So those are some of the major adjustments that we're making with this budget amendment and so on.
So Kathy, again, we had a number of grants, quite a few grants that make up the bulk of the new revenue, 1.2 million.
As well as investment income.
And investment income, which has been a great increase. But the increase in expenditures are still greater than that amount. And we cover that with money that we draw down from our ending fund balance.
Right. But
Which is by our own rules, has to be 8.2%, which is 1 month's operating costs.
Correct.
We've traditionally, in the last several years, we've gone well over that amount. And so we have the reserves to take care of the increased expenditures. You fully expect to be able to maintain that 1 month reserve plus move money over to our rainy day fund, our
Rainy day
emergency
fund.
fund that we set up a couple of years ago with the X dollars, and still have a balanced budget and
Right.
not have to have any new taxes.
Correct. That's how we're,
For 2024.
right. And then this budget amendment, we actually are adding to the fund balance because we've looked at all of our revenues and we were very conservative in our approach to revenues. And so we're amending those revenues up. And as a result, we're adding more funds to that reserve.
Right. Yep.
So,
We, just for the public to know, we went through this in fair amount of detail over the past few weeks and especially yesterday.
mhm.
We went through the 15-page spreadsheet. But I think for the public, I would look for kind of what you were asking is how are we trending? The public, I don't think cares very much whether it's bars code this or bars code that. So with that view in mind, I think there may be some hot issues to address, like insurance costs. People are happy to sue the county because there's a lot of money. So I'd like the public to understand how much we pay for insurance costs and that every time you go and draw from insurance, that means next year you're going to pay even more. So it's things like that. And going back to the stability question, there is a pot of money that more or less is dependable, and that's like the property tax. The sales tax you've mentioned before goes up and down. Just trying to give the public a feel so that they don't end up in a situation like happened in the city of Longview fairly recently, where new taxes were imposed on that. It's unfortunate that the moment there is money available, the appetite for things seems to grow. Someone made an astute comment, not here, was in one of the other agencies I was talking. They say the sense of entitlement is really rather strong, and I'm hoping people understand that that's not necessarily a good thing. So insurance costs, how much do we pay for that insurance?
So the insurance bill that we're prepared to pay just this month that we were presented is $2.5 million.
Yeah, if you could just say that's for the whole year.
That's for the whole year. It's our property insurance as well as our liability insurance, cyber insurance,
It
things like
doesn't
that.
include L&I.
It does not include our workers' comp or what we call industrial accident. And that's a different account. So that's just our liability, property, cyber insurance.
And even at that, that includes $100,000 deductible, right?
Yeah, our deductible for liability is $100,000. Our deductible for property is $5,000.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
And we've seen those premiums rise. I mean,
Yes,
we've
they're
even looked at taking on a larger deductible to see what the offset would be, and it's real minimal.
right.
It's really hard to find a place to save
Yeah, the
money.
last, since I've been here, the assessments from our risk pool went up 30%, and then this next year it's a 20% increase. So they have significantly increased over the last 2 years due to the insurance environment, due to the number of claims, things like that.
And I think
I'll go into it.
it was hard. It was up hard also the year before you came on board.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we get, when you see that, we're always saying, well, what are the options? And we've kind of looked at that. Not every county is part of the risk pool. There's counties that go it alone and they're in worse off than being in the risk pool. So
Yeah, the majority of them are in the risk pool.
yeah, we do try to monitor that, but I don't see a better place than where we're at right now that I can see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of the reasons we, I, I agree with you, and one of the reasons is we have a jail, and that's a mecca for lawsuits.
And health costs, that has really gone up.
Well, that's, yeah,
Yeah.
that's another form of insurance, isn't it?
Yeah.
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 And by the way, the health insurance is a big issue also, I think. HR would correct me, but we're paying per employee, or we're obligated per employee to the tune of about $1,900 a month. And there's some variation on that as people can opt in and opt out, but that's a number you should have in your head.
Yeah, that's what we're budgeting for 2025,
Yeah,
$1,900 per month.
that is a substantial amount of money.
So as you
The
said,
other
in
thing-
this
the other thing-
budget, we do have a fund balance that it keeps us in compliance with that 1 month of operating reserve.
The other thing that I wanted to mention that is sometimes forgotten in our discussion about county finances is that we did allow a portion of the sales tax to sunset. We're not collecting that this year. That was that behavioral health.
Behavioral
tax.
health, yes.
And we still have the funds through next year and about halfway into 2026.
Yes.
And unlike in the past, we have a rainy day fund, and you include feeding that fund.
Yes, and that fund is not on this budget amendment, but it is, it's projected to be in the neighborhood of about $3 million at the end of this year.
And you can see 3 million is not going to go very far, but it'll help cushion the problem. I think the chairman yesterday mentioned the Boeing Corporation and what he think the consequences might be.
Well, we had a discussion yesterday and Chairman Weber was talking about Boeing on strike and affecting that. And I just relayed when I worked up in that area for a small bank in Auburn, you know, when a big corporation has issues like that, it bleeds down because I banked a lot of small companies that did things for Boeing. And I don't think that's uncommon. I don't think that's unique to Boeing. There's a lot of big companies that contract out. And so the effect, well, though we're not located up in King County, you never know where these people are. And so it could have some effect. I don't know that it will, but.
Well, to the extent that we get grants from the state
That's the
for
point.
health and human services.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They'll be ratcheting down on
Yeah.
that.
One last question for you, then I'll open up to public comment. The piece that HHS put together yesterday, all this stuff is available to the public if they want a copy of it, right?
Yes, and I believe the clerk's office also makes it, puts it online as well.
Online. I just thought that was a pretty good
Documents.
piece that HHS put together yesterday that kind of explained in better detail
Yeah.
the changes that they've seen in their
They have
area.
at least
Health
three
and Human
or four
Services.
pages of these budget adjustments. Because they did a very thorough job line by line of looking at all their expenses and their revenues.
Yeah.
And
That's really more of a comment than
Mhm.
than a
Yeah,
question.
they
I
did an
just thought it was a
excellent
good
job of
piece. Yeah.
providing a narrative to go with it.
Any other questions up here? Okay, we'll open to public comment if there is any. You don't see anything online? Okay, I'm not seeing anything, so close public comment. What's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the budget amendment as has been discussed over the past period of time and presented here today.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the budget amendment. Any last questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we have time for public comments till 10 o'clock when we do awards. So if there is anybody that wants to comment, you're more than welcome.
I just had a question on the landfill, the gentleman that was here before.
Is the green light on?
It is.
It is. Am I not close enough? Is that better? If the landfill were being run at a loss, would the city of Kelso have an obligation to kick in to help cover that loss?
No.
Yet it's being run at a profit, so they want a piece of the profit? That just, okay. I just wanted to ask that. It doesn't quite make sense to me, but okay, thank you.
Oh, okay.
Just a matter of curiosity, when I walked into the building this morning, I noticed a big forklift up on the roof of the building directly to the north of us here. And was just curious of what's going on.
That was a re-roofing job. Oh, and is that a new HVAC there also?
And
I don't-
HVAC, yeah.
And
yeah.
HVAC, yeah.
Okay. And what is that building?
That is officially called the annex to this building. At one time, it housed the Health and Human Services Department. The third floor was the county museum. It's served a whole number of different purposes over the years. One major tenant right now is the Council of Governments that reviews grant requests for federal funding of roads projects for not only Cowlitz County, but all the cities in the county, as well as a 5-county region. And the Noxious Weed Control Board has their offices in the basement there as well. And we used to have our building and facilities and maintenance department had been headquartered over there. In January, or sometime in December, January, the Department of Public Defense is moving from leased facilities in Longview to this building where it's so we don't have to pay lease for there. And their office is growing because of Supreme Court decisions that those defenders have lower caseloads. So we're making some changes and trying to improve the HVAC system in the roof. So one of those ongoing problems that for all of our buildings that we have been tackling the last several years, incidentally, particularly since we've been taking money, the rent money from the landfill. We're able to get caught up on a lot of our maintenance. And
Yeah. So in
repairs.
January, there's going to be a lot of lawyers running around here.
A lot of what?
Lawyers running around.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Anything else?
Sorry, guys. Questions. I wasn't here on Monday, and I was wondering if you kind of give me a heads up on it. On the budget workshop for the corrections department, has anyone done any more studies on moving the juvenile detention center and using half of that for an adult? Did they bring that up? Did they look at the money issue on that?
You know, we've looked, the trouble with converting any of the juvenile center to an adult facility is you can't mix juveniles and adults, and it becomes a real problem. So that's why we looked at it as possibly a juvenile,
residential treatment.
yeah, resident treatment and mental health. But we held the presentation and we went to it so far as to have a firm we use kind of take and put out plans and how you could do that. And I thought they did a really good job on it, but the costs on it would be the same as it's a building, it's built as a jail, it's not built as the other, so it's like a $10 million price tag. So we're looking at other options rather than converting that, so.
Well, what I was told is, and I could be wrong, I'm pretty sure I am, but correct me, please, that right now, the number of inmates, the juvenile inmates, is really low, and it has been consistently low for some time. They're probably not prosecuting them, I'm not sure, but, and I could be wrong on this too, that there is a facility at the top of the courthouse where it used to be a jail, and it would need renovation because apparently they had issues. And maybe it won't be top drawer facility, but it would be doable for the number of inmates that would be allowed. Could we transfer the juveniles there and use the juvenile center in another way that would be less money?
You know, Flo, I don't know that I have a perfect answer to that. We're always looking at how to better utilize that facility. What we have to keep in mind is we cannot, and the message comes to us pretty strongly, we cannot mix juveniles with any
Well, I'm not
adults.
saying,
I know it. You have to be very careful because you're going to have adult peoples in the system running around the Hall of Justice, and it really has to be separated.
So in the Hall of Justice, the old jail that you were
Right.
talking about is served by one elevator. And
Right.
if you had youth up there, they would be using the same elevator to get in and out as the criminals are who are coming in to go to court.
I see.
So
Okay, now that's why I
that.
didn't
Otherwise, you have
understand.
to have a whole new elevator system, and that
Would
is
be money.
really expensive.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
we have looked at all kinds of configurations and trying to take advantage of that fourth floor, and it's pretty, I think we've had a few offices up there, but the roof has been leaking and we've looked at it,
Okay.
absolutely.
Another.
And we were surprised when they came back with architectural plans for a residential center at the youth facility, because, and the chairman alluded to that, it would be more expensive to remodel than to build a freestanding building,
I see.
because we're refitting an old style construction, so.
Okay.
And that was disappointing to us, but.
Okay, but there's another part about the juvenile center. Now, my husband worked there after he retired teaching. He would substitute and he did work there for a while as a teacher. And he said that they have pods.
Yeah.
So I can't see, I mean, could it possibly, you could wall off a pod, 2 pods for a juvenile detention and keep one for mental health? I mean, is that possible?
Well, that was the whole thing we went through.
Oh.
We
Except,
actually
And you
converted 2 pods to that, but the cost on it is.
I
just
see. Oh,
unbelievable.
okay. I just, this
except
question.
that we were looking at it for juvenile rehabilitation purposes or something like that, or mental health treatment. Would it be a different answer if we walled everything off in a way, even the compound area, and added single cells, which we desperately needed during the COVID era, and when our jail gets a mental health prospect, they have a heck of a time because the jail's capacity
Yeah.
is mostly the communal kind of cell, and you're not sure you want to put a madman right next to a 21-year-old.
Yeah.
Kind of youthful in my book, but your questions are really appropriate, so I appreciate them.
Well, I just think that the mental health has to be addressed. And if those 2 facilities aren't available, then I think, Dennis, what you mentioned about another facility, and I know this sounds totally crazy. But you know, the restaurant that's next to the courthouse, or
The old Charlie's restaurant?
yeah, it's always for sale. I mean,
Yeah.
I know that sounds silly, but
Yeah.
it would be close and it could be retrofitted, maybe possibly cheaper, but the mental health has to be addressed. We have huge problems. And I just thought maybe I could throw something in there.
Would it make a difference if it were for adults, just an extension of the jail? And by the way, I know that in addition to the fact that we can talk about the physical aspects, separating the adult population in that way will cause the jail operation a heck of a headache. And the cost would be a
Yeah.
factor to contend with.
Yeah.
Just in thinking about different facilities, the old hospital is now for sale. Monticello Medical has a big for sale sign out in front. They used to have an inpatient treatment program there. I don't know if that's something you guys have looked at.
Over where, sorry?
The old hospital, you know, it was bought, it used to be Monticello Medical, and then it was bought by St. John's. I don't know if it ever really got a new name after that, but it's right.
Across from the grade school there.
Yeah.
Yeah, across from Broadway
The old
Elementary.
Cowlitz General Hospital.
The old Cowlitz General used to be the train depot, if you go back far enough.
Yep.
But yeah, you know, the one, is that, I think it's on 7th Avenue.
Anything else? How many minutes we got? Why don't we take a quick 5-minute recess and then we'll come back and do the award ceremony?
That's good.
Okay.
Commissioner Mortensen, please report to the dais. Was my time up? I don't think I've seen you jump quite that fast before.
My hearing aids.
Oh. Not a problem.
Will Dennis Weber please contain himself?
Okay, Purvy's gonna help us. Purvy's gonna help us, but I don't know if you two want to join her, and since I'll just be on the mic, and
Yeah, we can do that.
want to do that? Okay, I gotta read this. Okay. So annually, we give out these excellence in service awards, and the criteria we consider for these awards, I'm told I need to read this. In order for an employee, elected officials are excluded. To be chosen for a service award, their nomination must be based upon performance during the preceding 12-month period and upon one or more of the following: extraordinary excellence in service, special effort in changing a practice or procedure that saves time or money, innovation in delivery and service, a contribution out of the normal work group or above and beyond the person's normal duty, outstanding job performance, consistent performance of their duties in a manner highly reflective of competency, exceptional personal qualities, dedication, performance, and professionalism, improvements of conditions within the department for the various departments. So these nominations come to us from coworkers in their departments and stuff, and then it goes through a scoring process, and then it ends up, the commissioners make the final 3 decisions. I'll do the names, and as I do the nominees, if I have you come up, and Kelly, I think, is going to relay a little bit of what was written about them. So the commissioners presented for service, the nominees were Hunter Reeves,
Hunter has demonstrated excellent work ethics and has helped the network operations team with numerous projects. He has studied and passed his CompTIA Network Plus certification, leading him to well on the way to becoming a future network engineer.
Jordan Cole,
Jordan has repeatedly delivered excellent results with multiple key projects such as the 9300 switch deployment and the VoIP phone projects. He studied and passed his CompTIA Network Plus certification and is a valuable asset to the daily operations of the Cowlitz County Network.
Mark Lefebvre.
Mark has been known throughout the Public Works Department for being positive, happy, and kind 100% of the time. Using his 41 years of experience and his wealth of knowledge in hauling equipment, and he stepped up to deliver a new and innovative training program to help guide our young and upcoming drivers and operators, along with many more experienced ones. The thing that makes Mark so outstanding is that he's proud to be on the road crew and to be able to serve the community daily.
Samantha Paxson.
Samantha has exemplified extraordinary excellence in service throughout her implementation of digital storage of issued permits to our public-facing permitting software that allows professionals and customers access to approved septic designs, even when the department is closed, and has decreased barriers of installation septic systems in the county.
And Tiffany Nelson.
Tiffany is deeply knowledgeable on county processes and functions. She exhibits strength and kindness daily while educating and supporting coworkers. She spearheaded the time card improvement plan, which alleviated work stress for many sub-departments. Tiffany is always finding ways to improve how the office functions and ways to be more efficient.
Then Larry Hembry.
Larry demonstrates extraordinary service to the community daily. He has worked tirelessly to grow the Lower Columbia School Safety Summit program so that it now includes Clark and Wahkiakum counties and impacts hundreds of educators and first responders.
Then the commissioners had the task of, you have a room full of actually winners and excellent people here, and we had to try and narrow it down. We narrowed it down to 3, and I'll announce those, and we have something for them over here. First on our list was Jordan Cole. Jordan's wishful thinking up here. Samantha Paxson. Tiffany Nelson. That's our awards for this year. We appreciate everybody.
One, two, oh, I'll start over. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Okay, is everybody's meetings adjourned?